time. This is the Pro Wrestling Review portion of that countdown, and apparently it's casual week. I'm Brian Krasner from the Daily News.
And I'm Ray Dieter from the Tribune Review.
I'm Jim DeBruzza, and I'm very unbalanced emotionally and physically this week.
As opposed to any other week, right?
I'm more stable other weeks, thank you very much. I almost cried coming on here.
I would like to say for you people tuning in and expecting to see Cardo-Rama on whatever station we're on here, we're like a bad rash. We just never go away. So we're back.
Without a good cream.
A good balm.
That's right.
Wow.
You can't underestimate
The power of a balm.
B-A-L-M.
So if we can move from the health topic of our show and maybe talk about what we're going to talk about on...
Oh, you mean we're going to
The
talk
new
about
Star Wars-
wrestling this week? That's
The
a
Star Wars
first.
trailer's been out this week. I'm sorry, we should intro the show, but
Yeah, we can't talk about movies on this show, Jim, only wrestling.
sorry.
We have a lot of wrestling-related topics to talk about. I believe probably the big topic of the week and what is making rounds pretty much everywhere, all over the internet, and I even think it was in USA Today, is the brand new Chuck Palumbo-Billy Gunn tag team. We'll be getting to that later. We're going to debate whether or not they should bring back Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara as your television writers for the WWF. And I'm not sure, but I think Tom has a number he's going to do later in the show.
A number? You mean like a song?
Yeah. I saw the Top Hat and Cane. I just assumed that.
Oh, come on. I'm a little more creative than that.
Oh, all right.
Oh, possibly. We don't know. Anyway,
Well,
well,
You
this
almost
is the
swayed him
intro.
into it.
yeah. Well, we're all going to go put the balm on, and we're going to come back talking
Who
about.
told you to put the bomb on?
Yeah. I didn't tell you to put the balm on.
Oh, God, that's a Seinfeld reference. Jeez.
Oh, no.
Thanks, Brian.
More hate mail this
Credibility
week. Thanks.
shot.
Yeah. All right. Goodbye.
That was our producer talking. He's never been on camera before. We'll see you.
We'll be back right after this.
Right now about Raw and what a show it was, and the big news coming out of it was The Rock regaining his WCW title against Chris, back to mid-card status, Jericho. Any thoughts? Anyone?
What?
Anyone?
Why you give a belt to The Rock when he doesn't need a belt because he's going to be over for the rest of his natural life because it annoys the hell out of me. I wake up screaming in the middle of the night. Jericho had a big win over Booker T 2 weeks ago. I guess you could call it a big win. It was his only win with the WCW title. Am I right, or did I get that factoid wrong?
No, you're right. One of many
And-
Booker
and
T's
there's
losses, too.
There's no better way than to promote a title and make it give it some credibility, make it mean something again, than to give it back to a guy who doesn't need it. And it was a good match too. That's the sad part. I knew he was going to lose. And with that, I shall leave.
We turned to the dejected Brian.
Yeah, I
Krasner.
guess you're waiting for me to say something.
Something.
Well, I'm not a booker, and I've never
You
been
should
one.
be.
But you
play
are a
one
soap
on
opera
TV.
writer.
Yeah, but I just do this little show. And-
Cable access.
Yeah. And it doesn't take a genius to figure out the reason there are no main event stars in the WWF right now, other than The Rock and Steve Austin and The Undertaker, is because the guys like Chris Jericho and Booker T, who should be main events, you know what? Just forget it. I say this every week.
were
It's not
going.
worth talking
I
about.
say it every week. They have to win matches. And when Jericho goes out and loses the match, I don't care if he gets shot and he loses the match. It hurts him. And it's just.
I sympathize. It's not worth talking
It's
about.
not.
We've said everything over and over again about making titles mean. I'm getting something patched in from Studio Z from Jim. But before I finish that and before we go to Jim, well, I'd like to finish that, which I guess we're still on. What is evident on this SmackDown 2 Thursdays ago, or whatever, I don't know when this show airs, when Bradshaw lost the European title to Christian. What was the point of that? To give Christian a belt so he could lose it. Oh, and by the way, Edge lost the Intercontinental title last night, I think.
But Rob Zombie's going to be on next week. Now, that'll make it all
Oh,
better.
maybe he'll kill everybody and eat their brains. Let's go to Jim.
Yeah, speaking of brains,
He's
we're
still
going to the.
brains.
we're
Not
going
only
to the
am I a
brains of
host,
the
I
show.
double as producer.
Well, you guys are really hitting me hard this week. Before you get off Chris Jericho, I just want to share, as watching Raw, when Chris Jericho was hitting The Rock into the turnbuckle, exposed turnbuckle, and The Rock was bleeding, I'm sitting at home thinking to myself, man, they could really do a lot of right things from this point. Now, what they could have done was, have Jericho win, number one, obviously. But they could have had Chris Jericho, focus on the head and then maybe move into the Lion Tamer, which they did, and replay the Hart-Austin, I believe it was WrestleMania match. Replay that finish and either have Jericho win, have Jericho get disqualified, and you could have saved face of Jericho and you could have done the exact same thing you did with his turn, and they blew it. I mean, they blew this. You have no one to blame themselves, and it's a
They
shame.
took a big steaming crap all over a good idea.
Which is more prevalent in WWF these days than ever, I'd like to add.
But it goes back, to draw on Jim's point, it goes back to The Rock and the fact that he doesn't sell anything. He was in the Lion Tamer.
Finally, you say that after 6 months of me trying to convince you.
Let me make this a point to say that Tom said this first 6 months ago, but I do agree with him now after watching the Jericho Rock matches. The fact that he had him in the Lion Tamer, Rock finally got to the ropes. Jericho pulled him back, stopped for a second, and The Rock just hooks him in a small package, and that's it.
And it may seem like
It was
nitpicking.
bad.
It may seem like nitpicking on our part, but the thing is, stuff like that makes a guy move a little more impactful. I don't know what word I'm trying to use here. You understand what I'm trying to say? Selling a move, selling someone's offense, makes that person look good, helps the other person look bad in a good way.
Well, I think if you ask somebody from the WWF who was involved in this match, they'll probably tell you that The Rock scored a quick upset win, and Jericho popped right up from it, and he was fine, and he came back, and he turned, I guess, quasi-heel now. So that's the defense the WWF would use.
Evil, huh?
Yeah, quasi-heel. But that's a defense I think the WWF would go with, is the fact that Jericho got beat, and then he popped up and just attacked The Rock. But the point is, he still lost a title that he needed for credibility purposes.
Yeah, getting your heat back doesn't mean a damn thing in this position right now. I mean, there's nothing they can do to. Go ahead, Tom.
Well,
I hate the
There's
Rock.
no point talking about this.
Well,
There
before,
really isn't.
before we quit talking about it, I just want to pose the question. What would have been so wrong with Jericho having the Lion Tamer on, The Rock reaching for the ropes, Jericho pulling him back out, and Rock tapping out?
Yeah, didn't Kane do that on SmackDown?
Yeah.
Kane's still 6'8", and people are still afraid of him, right?
That's one of the perceptions that I really don't like about wrestling right now, and that's the fact that a guy like Kane, he can't tap out. Why not?
Yeah.
He can
I
just
thought it
come
was
right
great.
back the next week and do something devastating. One loss, clean loss, does not kill your career.
Yeah, for the love of God, Rock is like, a demigod. I mean, like, him
He's the
losing-
Scorpion King.
Yeah, well, like him tapping to the Lion Tamer was going to end his career. He was going to be jobbing out to Mike Awesome on Heat the next week.
Was that guy with all the talent that he's never on TV though?
Well,
He's the one that
we'll
bumped
find
into
out
The
next week
Undertaker
when
and
Jericho's
introduced
feuding
himself.
with him.
Here's the thing, and this is going to seem self-explanatory when I say it. Without another company for top guys to, when their contracts expire, go to rotate your top guys like an Undertaker, say in WCW for a while, coming back, they get refreshed. There's new opponents. You have the same main eventers there for the past 3 or 4 years, 2, 3 years, whatever the heck it is, and it's not going to get any better with guys like Jericho never moving up and moving down real quick.
Well, in
Bottom
that
line.
same vein, we're going to take a commercial break. We're going to come back, and we saw another feud, possibly one that we've seen many, many times, The Undertaker and Steve Austin on Raw. So we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about that along with other stuff from Raw, so stay tuned.
Before we get back into Raw, I'm going to throw out a theory that I've been tossing around in the, up here really. The WWF, as bad as they're doing, well, not horribly, but they are starting to slip a little bit. Do you think the issue with Chris Jericho and other people in that not quite upper level status, you think the WWF is either A, afraid to put these guys up, the fear that things are going to get worse, or B, they're just going back to Austin, Rock, Undertaker because they feel this is a moneymaker and this is the only way we're going to get back to where we were like a year ago? And
But if you think about it from that perspective, you've already made your money off of as many Undertaker-Austin matches as you're going to have. No one wants to see them wrestle anymore. We saw Austin wrestle The Undertaker as his American Badass gimmick. Nobody cared. We saw Triple H, because the feud that spawned from that was Triple H and Kane, was actually better, because we haven't seen it at least on a pay-per-view level yet. So no, I don't think that's. I think they're tentative to do it, but when your ratings are slowly going down, you need something different.
I agree, but the fact is they're still going back to these guys. And when Triple H comes back, yeah, it's going to be a generic ratings boost for a week or two.
Maybe.
Well, I think his coming back on Raw will do that. Excuse me, but I mean they're going to go back to Triple H, and Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho even 6 months from now are probably going to be in the same spot. There has to be a reason for this.
How about a third possibility? The WWF says just screw everything for the time being. Let's wait till January whenever Hall and Nash's contracts expire, when Scott Steiner's contract expires.
But it's the same thing over and over again. And in 4 months we talk about how Hall and Nash are old.
Oh,
It'll be
I
the sa-
agree.
Yeah, it's more upper level guys. Well, let's face it. Scott Hall hasn't been 100% in 4 years. And
Well,
there's-
he's been over 100 proof, you might like to add. It's
but
true, damn it.
I'm sorry. I mean, he hasn't wrestled as good as he can be in over 4 years, and there's no telling if he's going to be that good in the ring. And Kevin Nash is just done.
Well, the
And
point,
he has nothing
One of the
left.
comments I made, though, before this past Monday's Raw was that I could quit watching the WWF from now until January, and I wouldn't miss anything. And we're not going to miss
But that's
anything. Because Vince
that's
is putting
true.
all those eggs in one basket, to use an old cliche, with Nash, Hall, Steiner, even maybe Rey Mysterio Jr.
But what happens when it doesn't work?
And it won't.
You're going to have to make it work.
But it's not. I mean, if you can't make Austin, Rock, Undertaker, Triple H, if you can't make those guys work on a long-term basis, eventually,
Jim, it's
I mean,
not
at
that
some
they
point,
can't make it work. It's just it doesn't work anymore. There's no chemistry between those two guys. When Austin and Undertaker first wrestled in '97, it was like these two guys have never fought each other, and it was a big deal. And then they went and had that Highway to Hell match.
But at some point, the point is, you got with what happened with Jericho, you got to move him up eventually. You got to start moving guys up, even to mid card. They're not doing it, and you can't just rely on Hall and Nash. In 6 months, it's going to be the same thing again.
Well, perfect example. That's Jeff Hardy. He beat Triple H for the Intercontinental title, and then the next week, him and his brother Matt were wrestling Edge and Christian or the Dudleys. Where's the consistency? There isn't any.
Yeah.
The thing is, the stigma with, okay, let's make Mike Awesome a main eventer, or let's make Lance Storm a main eventer. The ratings are on the downward turn. Buy rates are on the downward turn. But maybe the thinking within the WWF is, okay, if we make Mike Awesome, we're just throwing things to the wind, throwing things to caution. The ratings are going to go down even further. So let's stick with what we know will get us the
minimum.
Yeah, the minimum.
But here's the thing: if you are boiling down the ratings, why don't you put those guys in that the hardcore, everyday fans, the internet fans are going to like, the talented guys who can wrestle. I'm not saying not taking against the upper level guys.
Wrestling has never been booked for the hardcore fans. It's been booked for the crossover fans, the ones who are watching King of Queens,
But that's
the ones
the thing.
who are watching
How
PRL.
often have WWF fans seen Mike Austin do a dive over the top rope? And why convince me that that's not going to work?
But you're getting into a scenario the way the old Nitro used to be set up. And a few months, actually about 6 months ago, I talked to William Regal before a show in Pittsburgh, and he said one of the things about Nitro back in the day when it was popular was that the first hour and 45 minutes, it was great wrestling with great performers. You had your Rey Mysterio Jr.'s, Regal, Benoit, Saturn, and then the last half hour were your big stars, and all the emphasis on angles were put on them. And they just let those guys go out and fill out the first hour and 40 minutes of Nitro with just wrestling.
But
No story.
Right, and that's
so you can't do that with
eventually.
WWF.
Yeah, but eventually that's the downfall. But the thing is, the WWF has all those pieces in place anyway. They're supposedly supposed to have the stories for that. Why aren't they doing it?
That's a great question, and I think Brian has the answer.
Somebody has to have the answer.
I have almost no answers. But I mentioned before that I didn't want to talk about why guys like Chris Jericho weren't getting pushes and why this wasn't working, and I'm going to stick to that. But this is another aspect of the thing that I think that is also going to weigh into it. Maybe not so much now, but in the future, is there's nothing else out there. It's the WWF, and that's it. And so I think the intrigue before with an Austin Undertaker, a feud like that, is we watched Steve Austin develop during his time in WCW and ECW, and he'd already built that reputation. So it was like when he came in and he was finally getting a push into WWF, it was a long-time WWF guy like The Undertaker going up against a guy like Steve Austin who made his name elsewhere, and that's why I think that was so interesting. But everybody's the same now. Everybody's fought each other now. There's nothing left that's interesting. There's nothing left that's new. And there's nobody out there. I mean, what, are they going to bring in the Messiah from XPW? I know some of you at home are nodding your heads yes, but no. That's not going to happen. There's those guys like Steve Austin and guys like that just aren't out there anymore. And like I said, it's not going to hurt them now, but maybe 2 years down the road when there's nothing left and the well's completely dry, we're going to be going back to this, I think.
Well, it's one of those things where this is the same discussion we had maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago about WCW, was the fact that, all we're getting is the Pipers, the Hogans, the Savages, and you can look at it and say, well, those guys feuded in the past. Hogan and Savage feuded in '89, and then they brought that feud back in, '97? 10 years, you can have them, it hasn't been 10 years since The Undertaker and Steve Austin feuded. It's been, on and off for the last 5 years. That's what's hurting this feud. That's why it won't sell pay-per-views and won't increase your ratings.
The effect of overexposure, I think, is playing a big, big role in all this.
One of the main points as we got the break here is the fact that when Austin and McMahon got together for the first time and feuded, that was the biggest feud in the history of the WWF, I'm willing to bet. There's no Austin McMahon. There's nobody who hasn't wrestled anybody yet. There's nothing anybody's waiting to see. And that's it.
And that's a great point. So we're going to come back and we're going to talk more wrestling. Stay with us. We have our resident experts, Jim and Brian, to discuss whether or not Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara should come back to the World Wrestling Federation. Gentlemen, you're the next contestant. Never mind. Go ahead. Just go.
I'm sorry, that
God,
voice.
is that God?
Yeah, well, on our message boards on our website, ProWrestlingReview.com, a lot of people over the last couple of weeks, as the WWF has kind of gone further and further down the tubes, have brought up the theory of whether or not Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara should be brought back to write WWF television. And, I read all these comments myself and disagreed wholeheartedly over the last couple weeks as these things have been posted, because after all, these guys killed WCW, shaved Ric Flair bald, and, well, they did something with David Flair in his house when he was eating pizza. But this past week during Raw, and more specifically whenever Chris Jericho was locked into the small package for the WCW title loss, it finally started to maybe dawn on me that perhaps bringing Russo and Ferrara back wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. Granted, they had the tendency to, write very stupid stories and kind of get in over their heads. But the one thing they did very well is they did push main event talent. You did see guys continually getting pushed up into that level. You always saw new guys kind of fighting for the WWF title and things like that. And I think perhaps had those guys never left, or if they came back, maybe a year or so ago, Chris Jericho and Edge and Christian and William Regal and guys like that would already be main event stars like they should be, instead of treading water in the mid-card and sometimes even lower than that levels of the WWF. So I'm starting to think that, hey, I don't know, maybe bringing these guys back is not a bad idea.
I'm going to say no on three reasons. The first is, let's go back to their WWF stint and we saw what they did in WCW. Let's point out the fact that maybe these guys weren't that good to begin with, from their WWF storylines going to WCW. And let's not forget, Vince was there to cut out the crap or filter out the crap. The other talented writers, and maybe these guys they got hot. I mean, it's possible. The second is, well, they know how to elevate talent. Well, you know what? Send me a check for $50. I'll tell the WWF who they can elevate. It's not that hard to say. Chris Jericho, William Regal, Edge and Christian should be higher than they are. We've been saying it on here for 6 weeks now. The third is, Chris Jericho might have held the belt Monday with Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara there, but he probably would have dropped it 4 or 5 times from SmackDown to Raw. I mean, come on. Let's not pretend Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara understand the sanctity and meaning of a good title reign. They don't.
Well, I don't disagree with you on that, but I also think that the problem also might not just be who's writing the stories, but who's dealing with the talent. Vince Russo is one of those people who could tell a guy, I don't know, I can't really get in a good example in my head, but, say Undertaker didn't want to do a job or Undertaker didn't want to get involved in the story. Vince Russo is one of those guys that at least had enough guts to stand up to someone like that and say, no, you're going to do it because I'm telling you what to do. That needs to be done now. I mean, it's clear that these main event guys are out of control.
You're absolutely right, but when did Vince and Shane lose their backbone?
Who knows?
I mean, I'm sorry, these guys should be doing it. Number one, I'm sorry, let's put aside the reverence for the Undertaker. If you're not going out there and doing what's best for the company, get the hell out of this business.
I don't disagree with you.
No, you can't do stuff like that. And
Jim, I don't
as
disagree
far as Vince
with you.
Russo bringing that in, maybe he does have a rapport with the guys. But let's not forget, he's also friends with Kevin Nash, Scott Hall. All the buddies will be back, and he went to WCW. He did the right thing. He gave a list of 4 guys he wanted to push. Mm-hmm. Chris Benoit's name was there. Well, no kidding. I mean, Vince Russo ain't exactly the genius that he had one good idea.
Sure.
He had one big good idea in the WWF.
Sure.
It was huge, and it changed the landscape of wrestling. But it was one idea.
See, Jim, and again, I don't disagree with you on this point, but you also had the hierarchy of, Time Warner breathing down his neck every time he wanted to do an idea. And granted, that's not an excuse for putting on bad television, but the other thing is you mentioned, when did Shane and Vince lose their backbone? I agree with you, but here's the problem. Vince's daughter is going to probably marry a guy coming back in November who's got more stroke than anybody in the company. It wouldn't be unlike Triple H to hold a guy down. And now that he's coming back, I've read theories that, why did Kurt Angle turn heel all of a sudden? Could it be so Triple H could place himself in that hero position when he comes back? Not that he wouldn't deserve that spot to begin with, but if it's going to come to a guy like Chris Jericho who deserves the push, or a guy like Triple H who just goes to his wife Stephanie, who, by the way, is just writing some awful television, and say, hey, don't give Chris the push, give me the push, do you think that Vince or Shane's going to stand up for what's right and say, no, damn it, give it to Chris? Hell no. They're going to push Triple H.
They have to. They have to. If this is the problem that's happening in WWF, number one, as good as Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara are, they're not going to solve it. If that's the problem, they're not going to solve it, and nothing's going to solve it.
But Vince and
Shane.
But Russo and Ferrara don't have that personal tie like Vince would have, it being his son-in-law, where he could stand back and say,
look. They don't have a personal tie with Kevin Nash?
I'm not saying they don't, but they can. But he's not going to marry him. he can at least stand back and say it's bad for the company. We need to push Chris Jericho because it's his
Somebody's
time.
got to stand up and say that then. If
You're
that's the problem,
right.
if that's the problem, it's beyond anything we can do with Russo and Ferrara, and everybody in the country got behind it. It won't solve the problem.
But Jim, there ain't no cook in the kitchen right now that's going to point out that the pot's boiling over. No one's going
Good
to do
analogy.
it.
I like that. It should be Vince. It should be Vince and Shane.
You're
it
right.
should be the writers, and it's not happening. And Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara will not solve any problems.
No, see, I mean, I think they will. I think Russo has enough backbone to stand up and say, it's time for Chris
we
Jericho.
can debate
it's
that
time
off
for Edge and
screen.
Christian.
It's time.
We can debate it now, damn it. That's what
The ratings are saying that.
Yeah, right.
The buy rates are saying that. The mediocre crowds are saying that.
Right.
You don't need someone to say that. And
Well, apparently you do, because nobody's listening.
well, somebody needs to slap that. I don't know.
Hey.
But
Well, it should be us. I mean, we could do it.
yeah, we
but,
can
you
do
know,
it.
Yeah. Oh well. Well, whether or not Vince Russo or Ed Ferrara coming back is a good idea. Jim and I have differing opinions, but we'd like to know what you think. Send mail to ProWrestlingReview@lycos.com, and well, we'll come back after this.
Week's answers. Question number 1. Name Yokozuna's first pay-per-view match. It was at Survivor Series 92, and it was against that great wrestler Virgil. You might have saw him hang out with Roddy Piper for a while. Question number 2. The 2 title matches from WrestleMania 10 were Yokozuna versus Lex Luger, T.He Lex, and Yokozuna versus Bret Hart. Name the opening match at WrestleMania 5. This was a good one. It was Hercules versus King Haku, and how did the match end? Hercules won the match by pinfall with a backbridge suplex. This is an incredible piece of paper I'm holding in my hand because you got that right. And the question from last week's show, at the July 95 In Your House, who did Jeff Jarrett lose the Intercontinental title to? It was Shawn Michaels, and the winner is Joe M. from Pittsburgh, and he always seems to win. So congratulations, and you probably have about 10 of these coupons at home. So tell him what he won in case he doesn't know for the 8th time.
Well, Joe, just in case you haven't looked at your coupon, and if you haven't, send it back. All right? Because other people deserve to win. You win from Original Pizza Works in Dravosburg. That's in Pennsylvania, United States. 1 large pie with 1 topping, a carbonated beverage of your choice, and you get chicken wings. Why, Joe? Why am I telling you this? You've won 64 times. In fact, you know what? Let somebody else have a chance.
How many slices of pizza is that?
I don't know. I mean, Joe, we
He's very
thank
thorough
you.
in his answers.
He
too.
is. I mean, we thank you for playing the contest. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Dickens is giving you this. So.
Well, this week's question for everybody except for Joe M. When Test made his
That's a
WWF
nice piece of paper you got there.
yeah, what happened here? Look at this. When Test you get attacked by kittens in here. When Test made his WWF debut, he was acting as a bodyguard for what band that appeared on Raw? Let me try that again. When Test made his WWF debut, he was acting as a bodyguard for what band that appeared on Raw?
White Lion.
And
Pro
for
Wrestling
bonus,
Review at Lycos.com. You know
and
the
for
drill.
bonus, Nate, the lead singer of this particular band that we want the name of, what kind of shirt was he wearing? We might want that for bonus. It was a real fancy shirt, so I don't know.
All right, Joe. He's going to win, so, let's just address him.
Were you trying to rhyme? Anyway, send those answers in, and we're waiting to hear from you. Thank you, and Godspeed. What did you think? This is kind of like what we'd like to call a little random thoughts version of things that are on our mind. Maybe wrestling related, maybe not.
That's
So,
a hell of an
you can
intro,
put-
man.
Yeah, you can play along at home, too.
But Jim, we have to be consistent about this.
Right,
So
we
I have
can't
to have
talk about
consistently good intros and consistently bad hair. And as you can see, I'm right on the money. So let's fire it away.
Hey, we're only like a month away, 2 months away from Lord of the Rings coming out. I'm pretty excited.
Oh, we're starting. Okay, good.
Are you
are we?
starting?
Were
or
you
is that
starting?
just-
Well, that's it, basically. That's all I have to say on that. I'm pretty psyched about Lord of the Rings. It looks really good.
I remember finding the Ahmed Johnson and British Bulldog action figures at Toys R Us in Monroeville, and I was screaming to my wife, and she was looking at me like I was an idiot.
I think when on the first or last issue, oh boy, the last edition of Nitro, when Vince McMahon said he was going to bury WCW, he was actually telling the truth.
These pretzels are making me thirsty.
Well, we're really out of gas on the show. Hey, go see Monsters Inc. It's a good movie. I'm just
What are you doing down there?
I'm pissing people off, man. That's what I do.
Not another movie review show. My God.
Well, it was kind of funny.
Oh wait, I'm not supposed to elaborate on it. I'm sorry, Jim.
Well, speaking of the
Is
movie,
that-
I get. Yeah, I
we don't have to
don't
go
think
in
I
any order.
started.
We don't have to go in any order.
Yeah,
I think
that's
No
just
Holds
true.
Barred would have been a better movie if the whole ring would have exploded and killed all the people in the arena. I think that
Literally or figuratively?
figuratively.
Oh, you mean in the movie?
Yeah.
Sticking on the action figure thing, I remember being all excited finding Series 10 of the Bendies, and they had the Jeff Jarrett in his Aztec outfit, and I thought that was really neat because, hey, that's the only figure they're going to make with him in his Aztec outfit. It's going to be worth something. Actually, it's not.
Do you remember when Ric Flair could wrestle consistently, another word of the day for Pro Wrestling Review, consistently good matches against anybody in the NWA, whether it was Ricky Morton, Ronnie Garvin, Jimmy Garvin, Johnny B. Bad in later years, Steven Regal at the time. Wasn't that just a great time to watch wrestling?
Speaking of Ronnie Garvin, I thought it was hilarious at WrestleMania 5 when he wrestled Greg Valentine. No, not because he wrestled Greg Valentine, but before the match even started, he took his red towel around his neck off and he pretended to throw it into the crowd, and he kept doing it, and it started to get real tedious. And finally, Valentine blasted him from behind, and the towel just went down, and Garvin just tumbled out of the ring.
I mean, what
I
I
thought it was
found
funny.
really funny about Ronnie Garvin, since you brought this up, aside from, Ronnie Garvin himself, you remember when he turned WCW? I think he turned on Dusty Rhodes.
Oh, jeez.
You remember that? I guess Gary Hart paid him off, and they should have shot Ronnie Garvin in the back with a briefcase of money. He was rubbing the money on him. Does anyone else remember that?
I've got another good Ronnie Garvin. Remember whenever he was
This has
in the
become
midst,
the Ronnie Garvin random thought segment, apparently.
in the midst of his whole feud with Ric Flair, and Ronnie Garvin is never actually exactly known for his, heavy fire promos. So he's getting ready for this big match, I think on a house show or something against Ric Flair, and he said, "Ric Flair, I've got your number, and I don't mean your phone number." That's why Ronnie Garvin didn't make it.
One of the funniest things on NFL films is when Bobby Ross gets the Gatorade stuck in his starter jacket hood, and he doesn't know, it's like a bald eagle flew into his back of his hair, and he just keeps turning around like this. I thought that was
So I was going to bring up another Ronnie and Jim Garvin moment, if I may. You remember, I think it was when I guess Jimmy Garvin got burned. One of them got burned. Doesn't matter which.
What my life?
Anyway, Ronnie Garvin saved him. They're starting out. They're in the parking lot, and they come to a point where there's a roadblock. And instead of driving around the roadblock, Ronnie Garvin gets out of the car, moves the roadblock, and drives on.
Oh, God.
Yeah, beautiful stuff.
Well, this completely goes against random thoughts, but I'm going to elaborate more on Ronnie Garvin, as everybody else has. It was an old interview on NWA television. I forget what year it might have been. And you know the old saying, "You've bitten off more than you can chew." Of course you do. Everyone has used it. Everyone has said it.
Oh, no.
Ronnie Garvin said it in an interview, but he forgot the last line. So it came out like, "You've bitten off more than I know." Another great moment for television for Ronnie Garvin. RGTV, if you will.
Can I see, I don't want to ask this question on the air because I don't want to embarrass myself and I don't want to seem irreverent, so I'm going to wait till we're off the air. But it had to do with Ronnie Garvin, so please remind me.
Oh, we're kind of out of material. So you might as well just go ahead and do it.
No. I really would rather not do that. Remember Ronnie Garvin was Miss Atlantic? Oh, God.
He went to
Ronnie
was it Ric
Garvin.
Flair's apartment or something? And he knocked out J.J. Dillon.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, why was J.J. Dillon with her? If Ric Flair had a hot date with Miss Atlanta Live. Well, let's not get into that.
Hey, how about that Shockmaster?
Wasn't it great in the days where Terry Funk could put a plastic bag over someone's head and it actually looked like he got hurt when he got power drove on a table?
Yeah, how come there were no parents screaming and yelling at oh, you can put a plastic bag over a kid's head and suffocate?
Well, those already have a warning on them, I
It
think.
doesn't matter.
Well,
Parents had brains back then.
Oh, that's true. Oh, okay, forget that last thing I said then.
well, you know.
Whatever happened to Black Blood? Look at that feeling Billy Jack Haynes was like on welfare. I don't know. He just seemed like one of those guys.
He's on something. I don't think it was welfare.
Not that there's any problem with welfare, but, well... I
Did you ever
won't
get the
into
feeling that Outlaw Ron Bass wasn't a wrestler?
He wasn't. Well, you know what? Here's a question. Now that we're in mid-'80s heels that didn't do anything. Actually, he wasn't a heel. What was the
Good
story?
segue.
Yeah. What was the story with Outback Jack? Like, did he have a history? Did he work the independent circuit? You know...
Well, that Steve Irwin stole his gimmick and actually made money off of it. Whereas
Yeah,
Outback Jack probably
my
had worked
wife-
at Outback Steakhouse.
I shouldn't say this. I'm going to get divorced now after I say this. My wife loved Skinner. I don't know why, and I don't even think she knows why, but she bought the Skinner action figure. And the Crush action
You
figure.
lied. You
Wow.
bought
I
it.
swear to
You
God.
bought it
No,
for yourself.
I swear to you. And
I can find out if that's true, by the way.
Look at this. I'm like putting my wife up here to swear to save my reputation.
Remember when Skinner killed The Undertaker on Raw?
Oh, that was
He went off
great.
the air?
That was
Well-
Berserker with a sword.
In another segment for Pro Wrestling Review Gone Bad, or at least inconsistent, we might like to add, this Random Thoughts thing has been an eye-opening experience for us all. So we invite you to come back if you want to. I really don't care.
I should
And
also
we'll
say
be
that I love and respect my wife because I'm in a lot of trouble right now.
Okay, I get you. And we'll be back.
We're just flooding with topics, and
We should maybe mention to the people out there that we all had 4 shots of Ritalin after that last segment, just to.
we also decided last week, and we haven't talked about this since then, that a show in the future we are going to do. God, it just got
It's
really
your time,
light.
Brian. I'm out of here.
Man, I wasn't ready. Of course, you never are. Let's see, what was I saying? Oh, we decided we're going to do a show once with 0 sleep. We're going to go 24 hours without sleeping and do a show. And see
And I
how-
posed the
This
question,
is
let's do
different.
48 if we're going to go 24. So.
48. And just straight caffeine. And we should also point out that it's not far away from the holiday season, so the PWR Christmas show will be coming up. And don't forget the disaster that thing was last year. So
Yeah, don't forget next week is PWR Light Up Night.
well,
I never
Before we
understood
get
that.
into that, give
it's
the
the
email.
PWR Veterans Day
I'm
show.
sorry, I'm interrupting everybody.
Jim.
Well, we got 2 emails to give out now. The first is prowrestlingview@lycos.com. We all know what that is. But if you
Can I stop?
What
you?
is
sure.
it?
I want all the viewers at home right now to shut up and stop eating and stop drinking and just shut up.
Wow.
Tell your kids to shut up. Put the dog outside. Jim has something to say.
Can you follow up on that?
I don't think I can. Well, if you just want to fast forward past this part and go read my column, which yes, it's updated on the website, people. Because God forbid I don't do that.
That's where the light came on.
Right.
Jerk.
But if you read the, if you don't, I'll put it out for you. Pro Wrestling View has been remiss in our duties. We have failed to give the proper forum for those of you out there who just want to insult the crap out of us. And we see it on the website all the time, calling Tom gay, calling me a Yeti, saying I have the column work rate of the big show. And actually that one was funny, but still. Well, those of you out there hate us, and we don't want you to put it on the website because, well, a lot of people just don't want to read that stuff. But you deserve a forum. So if you're out there listening, write this down. It's IHatePWR@cs.com. This is your forum. This is your email segment. You can put whatever the hell you want in this email. It's IHatePWR@cs.com.
And remember out there for all you dyslexic people, that's all one word we'd like to add too.
Well, let's point out too that this particular web address is for people to just
Email
attack-
address.
I'm sorry, email address
Email.
is for people just to attack us personally.
Right. Say what you
This is
want.
no, we don't want to see any wrestlers' names, no edges, no Christians,
and yeah,
no
right.
Hardy
And if
Boys.
you have constructive criticism for us, please send that to the Lycos account. But the one more time.
The one we're going to read.
Capital I, small HATE, capital PWR@cs.com.
And I think the other thing that really needs to be pointed out too, as serious as business as this is this must be pure and real hatred. No hate prank mail. Please make sure that this is true. I really want true sour feelings here. And if it's not,
And don't
we're
just say
gonna
things like, "Hey, you guys are gay." Well, just say use the word homo. It's your forum to do that.
no offense to our gay friends out there
Right.
who might be watching the show and probably.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
I didn't say there's nothing wrong.
I'm keeping with the
I
sign.
know you are.
Thank you.
I was trying to.
Am I the only one that doesn't watch Seinfeld?
What?
Yes.
Am I the only one that doesn't watch Seinfeld? One more time with that email address. It's IHatePWR@cs.com. I will get it in a prompt and very, very quick manner.
Do we,
Which
do we
means-
want
Unlike your column work, right?
Right,
do we
exactly.
want creativity on this or just blind hatred?
Blind hatred. Creativity goes to the Lycos account.
Yeah, but the thing is,
Creativity is where the website
There-
feedback.
well, granted, you suck because why? You suck. Well, yeah,
That's what
okay.
this is for. But see, a lot of our fans
Tell
also,
us, Jim.
Well, a lot of our fans, even someone on your page this week said, well, even the insults get a little boring after a while.
No, I
And
agree.
we take them down because we think a lot of people don't want to read that.
But the thing is,
But if you
people-
want us to read those insults, it's
Insult-
IHatePWR@cs.com.
showing ass and insults are great. I love it, insults. But the thing is, half the people out there, you suck. Suck spelled with a Z, for Christ's sake.
Whoa! Hey.
That's going to be taken out. That's part of the. He's just demonstrating the point of how the other email
Yeah.
site's supposed to be handled.
But the other thing I think we should mention here also is your efforts are not
Oh.
in vain. As you mentioned, Jim will be reading
Right.
these. We will be reading them.
Never a dull moment, huh?
Right.
I want to fill that up.
And if we get a good accumulation of these things, and we feel that they are,
Oh, hell.
and we feel they are of top quality, we will come on the show and we will read them. And
Please tell me what happened. Yeah.
We are here to make you happy. And if we're not making you happy, then damn it, what are we here for?
And the Joe Mamas of Homestead deserve to be
That's
heard,
right.
okay? Almost rhymed there.
Wow. Oh, I'm sorry, Tom.
Well, no, it was just a random thought.
I
That was
wanna
for
hear it.
last segment.
Well, you know what? Let's.
Have we talked about
By the way,
anything?
Jim, there's some dirt on your chin. You need to wipe
Oh.
that off
Let's-
later.
Let's get off the
The
blind
hell?
hatred here for just a second. Oh crap, we only got a minute. Let's get off the blind hatred for a second. We should probably point out in the only reverent moment of the show that Helen Hart, the matriarch of the wrestling Hart family, passed away this past week. She had been in and out of the hospital and really wasn't in very good shape, and so. And if you also remember that Stu Hart recently wasn't in very good shape, he was in and out of the hospital, but the Hart family. It's a tough lot. I mean, seriously, it's a tough lot. I mean, the Hart family has been through a
I
lot.
was in no way obviously making light of what you just said.
No, why?
In no
with
way.
The problems Stu Hart has, we hope.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I
He
was
agrees.
obviously laughing from a previous segment, but why? How we go from that to something as serious as
I
someone
know.
Well, we want to
passing
extend
away?
our condolences to the Hart family as well.
Absolutely, but I just we kind of the beginning of the segment, obviously up until the last
Hey,
minute or so.
You
it
don't
was
have to
just kinda-
explain yourself.
Yeah, it's.
We
Well, no,
understand.
because we're insulting and we're
Yeah.
insensitive. I just like to point that out. But this wasn't a moment of insult,
No,
insulting
not
or
at all.
insensitivity.
But we should point out that the Hart family has been through a lot the last couple of years.
Oh,
Whether you agree
absolutely.
with the whole Bret Hart situation or not, a lot of the Hart family members had to kind of pick sides between the WWF and Bret Hart, and it was just sad that the last couple of years of Helen's life was kind of having to deal with this and having to deal with her family being torn apart and having to lose her son Owen in such a horrific manner. So again, as you said, Tom, we send our condolences out to the Hart family, and that's about it. So
Rants are next, so stop back.
Last week, really thank you. I'm going to talk a little more about Chris Jericho. We pretty much debated to death the Chris Jericho situation, but one topic I want to touch on. In the past, Chris Jericho has been up and down. He's gotten this cup of coffee in the upper level and gone back down. A lot of people in the past have said, well, Chris Jericho hasn't really performed as well as he should have to stay where he is. And I guess the three-way with Benoit and Austin, I think that may be true. But with this whole thing with The Rock, that argument does not hold. Chris Jericho has done nothing wrong. He's performed unbelievable. The main matches with The Rock have been great. His character has been great. His interview skill, the interview segments with him and The Rock have been fantastic. Chris Jericho himself has done nothing performance-wise to deserve this. Hopefully one day the WWF will put him up there and keep him up there, and he's up there. In my opinion, he's ready to be a main event star. Excuse me?
It was a gasp. I couldn't believe you said it.
Well,
Well,
that or test.
there was some word this week that there's going to be some changes made in the WWF over the next couple months. But apparently, these said changes are going to involve the title. So I come up with my own plan. You can read it on the webpage right now. I've posted up an articulate column about it. But this is what I would do. I would take the WWF Intercontinental title and the WWS title, let's say Monday on Raw. I'd have Test fight Kurt Angle. The winner of that match gets the WWF Intercontinental title, the US title gets put on the shelf. I would have the Cruiserweight champion, who's Tajiri, and you can't fight X-Pac as light heavyweight champion because, wow, he's injured, but I'd have him fight Kidman. The winner of that match gets the WWF light heavyweight title, Cruiserweight title gets put on the shelf. On SmackDown, I would have the Dudleys defend the WCW belts against Booker T and Test. Winner of that match gets the WWF tag belts, WCW belts again get put on the shelf. So you have not necessarily unified, but you've put together your three champions. I would have the IC title and the light heavyweight title defended every week on Raw. That's it. On SmackDown, every week I would have the WWF tag belts and the European belt defended every week on SmackDown. Not on Raw, but on SmackDown. The hardcore title I would bury. I'd have an 8-man tournament at the next pay-per-view, which is Vengeance or whatever. Have your 8 best hardcore wrestlers have a big blowout. Have the winner be crowned the hardcore champion forever and ever, and that's it. And have Rock go up against Austin for the WWF title. The winner gets that belt. So you can kind of clean up these title situations a little bit. Now, the reason I said put the WCW belts on the shelf is if one day the WCW television program does come to pass, then you have those belts that are just not unified, but they've been sitting there kind of waiting for a new champion. So then at that time, you can have tournaments to crown new champions, start a whole new lineage, and they won't do it.
Well, it could have been Jericho versus Austin in that unification match, but that's not going to happen.
It's no secret that Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Scott Steiner, and possibly even Rey Mysterio Jr. are going to be joining the WWF in early 2002. And with these four guys, obviously you get four of WCW's bigger names from the past. And I'm sure Vince McMahon, we hope anyway, won't have any trouble finding something to do with them. But 2 years ago, there were another four wrestlers that made their WWF debut from WCW. They were Chris Benoit, Perry Saturn, Eddie Guerrero, and Dean Malenko. And I was privileged enough to be at the Raw where they showed up and they attacked the New Age Outlaws. And it actually seemed like a big deal when those four guys showed up. Dean Malenko walked up the ramp after they made their first appearance in the ring. The guy had tears in his eyes, and for someone like Malenko, who's maybe not necessarily struggled, but was, held down in WCW just like all the other mid-carders were. And it was almost like he just got a chance to take it all in and see 20,000 people, not cardboard cutouts, in the crowd and just say, I finally have arrived. And you look 2 years from now and you see where these guys are at. Dean Malenko is retired. Whether or not that was because the WWF wasn't doing anything with him or he just made the decision on his own, that's fine. Perry Saturn hasn't done anything. You can make a case that Chris Benoit has actually done something. He had a few feuds with The Rock where obviously The Rock squashed him in matches that were main events on pay-per-views. And then Eddie Guerrero, obviously, if you've been keeping up on the internet, and we know you have, he should be back in the WWF sometime soon. So hopefully he'll be able to get his things in order. But it just hurts the fact that you have four guys, four radicals, as Jim Ross pointed out, saying, and the WWF could not find something for these guys to do, at least not after the first 4 weeks. And then WWF turned them heel, and it just kind of spawned in this horrible run for most all of them, unless you count, obviously, Benoit, who did experience a little bit of success. So it's a shame that you have the radicals, and then you're gonna have these other four guys debut. And the WWF's gonna know what to do with Hall and Nash because they're so cool and so hip, but they just couldn't do the same thing with four great wrestlers.
This is more of an observation than a rant, but I assure you there is a little bit of rantness involved at the end. You remember the old WCW show Nitro? It's a great show, wasn't it, from time to time? Yeah, I agree. Well, do you ever notice how guys like Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, and even Chris Benoit, maybe even Juventud Guerrero to a certain extent, could get over without characters and just on their wrestling ability? I did. WCW would just throw them out there in matches, in good matches, with no character, a little bit of build-up, maybe Rey Mysterio is feuding with a Dean Malenko or Psychosis or whatever, and the fans would react well to Mysterio because he had innovative moves, because he wrestled well, and because he put on a good match. He didn't have a character where he was talking to a mop or a porno star gimmick, which I kind of like, by the way, but the point is, guys in the WWF right now in this current state, if you don't have a character, you can't get over. Mike Awesome, Landstorm, prime examples of that, and even on the 10th Power as an example of that is Jerry Lynn, who probably has the least amount of mic experience in the world, can't cut a promo worth his life, according to some, but is one of the best wrestlers, I'd say the top 50 best wrestlers of the past 10 years, maybe a little longer. But it's truly a shame he's not going to get over because of his wrestling ability. They keep him off TVs in Ohio Valley, probably shoveling leaves right now. It is truly a shame because in WCW, on Nitro, in its early beginnings when you had guys like Mysterios, like Juventud, like Psychosis, getting over on their ability, Jerry Lynn could have got over on his wrestling ability, and then the character would have followed after that. Unfortunately, right now the WWF's mindset, let's develop a character first, work on wrestling ability second. And that's going to be their ultimate downfall.
Okay, we sort of see these.
Cha-ching!
Yeah.
That's a money rant there.
That's 5 seconds of silence just to take it over. My column's called Sharpshoot. You can read it in the Daily News. It's available on newsstands everywhere, and you can read it on the internet, www.dailynewspeaceful.com. Click on columnists.
And if you want to read my column, you can pick it up on the newsstands tomorrow, or you can read it on the web. It's www.triblive.com/sports. Not sport, but we'll get that fixed. We'll get that fixed next week. I wanted to thank some of the viewers that sent me positive feedback for the Chris Canyon idea. Unfortunately, he's hurt, so I appreciate it.
Jim, in addition to reading the question, please let me do the website, do the Hate Pro Wrestling Review after your question.
Okay.
So I need something to plug.
What do you want to plug again?
ProWrestlingReview.com.
Okay, well,
send creative, positive or negative comments. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. The question again is, when Test made his WWF debut, he was bodyguard for what band that appeared on Raw? Name the band, name the other 3 questions, ProWrestlingReview@likeless.com. Hate mail, capital I, hate, PWR, capital PWR, @cs.com.
And in addition to Light Up Night being next week's Pro Wrestling Review topic of the show, not really.
The official start of the Sparkle season.
Yes, which is a load of bunk. But stay tuned for the Christmas show in the upcoming weeks. Send us some email to the website. What you'd like to see on this Christmas show? I'm sure we'll have a Santa Claus. What kind of Santa? It's up to you.
It's going to be a total debacle.
Well,
We're
like
just
last
letting
year's
people know.
wasn't, right?
Well, no, we need to
Last
top.
statement wasn't.
We need to top last year's. Oh my
Somehow,
gosh.
I think we will. And we're slowly but surely fading away. And we'll see you next week for all of us. Goodbye. We're gone.